It's good to see you guys. No, we're done with the 2 minutes. We already had them. No, we're ready to start. Hey, it's good to see you guys. I hear a lot of chatter going on. So, how many of you did the race this morning? Oh. Well, I've been driving Indy cars in my mind, but that doesn't count. Anyway, so any of you impeded coming here because of traffic or anything? Okay. All right. I hope you brought your seat belts with you. You don't need helmets today, but you'll need the seat belts. We've got a lot to cover. I know you got a little bit of an idea of the direction we're going because of the lesson. What we're going to do today is something different. I changed courses. We're supposed to have the U.S. and Bible Prophecy second today, but I decided to do my full disclosure mark of the beast, so we're going to do it in 2 sections. Now, there's been some questions about when the meeting is going to end. Let me ask you a question. How many of you received in the mail a while back, a month or so ago, a full brochure with, like 14 nights and then saying at the bottom, continuing series into March, and it names some of the subjects, and it had the picture of my wife and I on it. How many of you received that in the mail? Okay. That is what we're going by. Okay? And the meetings will end, for those of you that want it to end, on March the 11th. But I usually start a Revelation class sometime during that last week leading up to March the 11th on the the book of Revelation, chapter by chapter. It'll be one night a week and on Saturday morning for those of you, and I'll give you an opportunity to sign up for that. That goes a little deeper than what we're doing right now, okay? And I have found that usually we get about 99% of the folks coming to the meetings want to be a part of that. And definitely be digging deeper. Now, are any of you drowning right now? That's a loaded question. And what I mean by that, is it too much information overload, or you're doing good? You're handling it? You know the old Ford advertisement, tough is what tough does, and tough does what tough is. Well, we could say that about theology too, right? All right. I hope you guys are good. We're going to get into some very interesting material today. And keep in mind that we always want to understand how we get what we get when it comes to Bible study. It's one thing to just come and listen and receive a lecture, but be clueless as to how the speaker came up with the material. I want you to understand how the Bible works. That is a process that we've been following in these meetings. So we want to be clear on that today. We're going to use the principle of the mention of the first and the last. Let me define it before we pray. Many times in the book of Revelation, information is borrowed from the Old Testament. So in order to really understand the context of what Revelation is saying, let's just say the mark. The logical thing to do is to go back in time into the Old Testament and look at where the mark is mentioned. Look at the principles that surround the use of that word, and then go back and compare it to what Revelation is saying. Most of the material that's in Revelation can be understood by going to the Old Testament, where the inception of that idea, the wording, and the principles are found. Does that make sense? You with me? Okay. Unfortunately today, the majority of people that teach on Bible prophecy simply take current events like the war in Ukraine, Russia, and all those things, and they try to superimpose those on the Scriptures and try to look at end-time prophecy, take these events and apply them to that end-time prophecy as a fulfillment. Now, it's nothing wrong with looking at history and seeing how history is fulfilled, but the Bible must reveal those events before they happen. So what we're going to do today, again, is to look deep into the Old Testament to understand what the mark is. And I'd like to say this also. The seal of God, or the mark of God, is the most important thing. People get all excited about the mark of the beast because you hear it everywhere. The seal of God just outweighs the mark of the beast. In fact, you can't understand the mark of the beast without the mark of God. And I have people come to meetings like this all the time and say, never heard of the mark of God. Never heard of it. Have no idea as to what you're talking about. You cannot underscore, highlight. You cannot understand the mark of the beast without understanding the mark of God. So when I see, and I say this in respect, when I see guys on TV or hear it on the radio or see publications, and it's all about sensationalism, kind of a Hollywood type take on end time prophecy, and I notice that it has very little to do with Jesus, you can be assured it's a trail leading to a dead end. It makes the speaker money. And please do not misunderstand me. I'm not saying that these people are greedy or that they're trying to create an environment where they're making a bunch of money off people. That's not it. But they sell this stuff. And the more, we're adults in here, the more sexy it is. And I'm not talking about sex. You understand that term is used very freely. The more Hollywood-like people gravitate towards it. Let me say this. Mark of the beast, the seal of God, need to deal with our hearts. Need to deal with our minds. It has to do with a spiritual experience with Christ or a experience with Antichrist. It calls for a decision. It calls for us to contemplate deeply. It's not for entertainment, ladies and gentlemen. It's for transformation. That's what the Bible is all about. And that's why you are here. Because you want to study the Bible, right? And you want to dig deep. And I do understand and know that sometimes when you're studying the Bible, it steps on your toes, does it not? Of course it does. And conviction is brought to the heart. That's through the power of the Holy Spirit. So let's invite the Holy Spirit to be here with us today to help us understand. Let us pray. Gracious Father in heaven, as we approach this very important topic, we pray that we will understand it from your point of view, that we will see it through your eyes, that we would be willing to put away all the different concepts and Hollywood versions of this subject. That we will put away, dear Lord, any superstitious ideas about 666. We don't believe in black cats and walking under ladders. Help us, O Lord, to see Jesus today. That our hearts might trust in Him. Help us. We need wisdom. You have said in the book of James, if any lack wisdom, and every one of us in this room lack wisdom, Lord. Help us to understand, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So let's begin by turning to the Old Testament, Ezekiel chapter 9 and verse 2. Now the first mention of a mark in the Bible is in Genesis. It's the mark that was placed upon Cain. But I have found that here in Ezekiel 9, it's more specific. And this is the basis for what we're going to see a little later in the book of Revelation. So we're going to go slowly through the text. We're going to weigh every word, and we want to see the spiritual aspects of this. In Ezekiel chapter 9 and verse 2, and suddenly 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate. And then it goes on to say, which faces north, each with his battle axe in his hand. Now, let this picture emerge in your mind right now. You've got 6 warriors. They're headed north. You can definitely tell that they're in Jerusalem by the wording, the upper gate, which faces north. They have battle axes in their hands. So immediately we are attentive. What's going to happen next? And then it says, one man among them was clothed with linen and had a writer's inkhorn at his side. Is he part of or an addition to? He is different in the sense that he does not have a battle axe, but he has the instruments of one that is a chronicle. And he had a writer's inkhorn at his side. They went in and stood beside the bronze altar. Now, in the future, we're going to talk about the sanctuary, earthly sanctuary, heavenly sanctuary. The bronze altar is the first piece of furniture that you come to when you go into the precincts of the sanctuary. There is the courtyard, and in the courtyard are 2 pieces of furniture. One is the bronze altar, and one is the laver. The bronze altar is where the sacrifice is made. That's where the lamb is brought. That's where the sinner places his hand and takes the knife and cuts the throat. And the priest then collects the blood. And the body of the creature, the fat, ends up on the bronze altar. So in your mind's eye, we're standing at the bronze altar, and as you face the sanctuary, as though this was the doors, that window, as I would look from the bronze altar, I would see the entrance into the tabernacle itself, which has 2 apartments. There is the holy place and there is the most holy place. We're going to notice that there's a being that comes to the door of the first apartment and gives instructions to these guys that are standing at the bronze altar. And when it says they went into the courtyard. Verse 3, now the glory of the God of Israel had gone up from the cherub. Now let's stop right there at that comma. The glory of God is found in the most holy place. The Ark of the Covenant has 2 angels or 2 cherubims, and between those 2 cherubims, the Ark is below, and on top of the ark there's a thing called the mercy seat, and within the ark are the 2 tables of stone written on by God's own finger. The mercy seat would represent Christ. The Shekinah glory, as the Hebrews would call it, would shine out between those 2 cherubs. So we know that it's mentioning the most holy place right now. The God of Israel had gone up from the cherub where it had been to the threshold of the temple. The glory of God, God's presence, moves from the most holy through the holy and is now at the entrance of the holy place. And he called to the man clothed with linen who had the writer's inkhorn at his side. Notice the message that the God of heaven gives to the scribe. And the Lord said to him, go through the midst of the what? Now, what city are we talking about? Anciently, it would be where? Jerusalem. Through the midst of what? Jerusalem. Now, notice what he is to do. And put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within it. it's very apparent God has a problem with His people. And He says that the problems are the abominations. And He says to the scribe, He says, I want you to put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within it. In other words, put a mark, and it doesn't say the hand, does it? It only says what? The forehead. And there's a reason why. And we'll come to that. Oh, there's a popular belief today that there's going to be some kind of demonic reptile with a Sharpie writing 666 on people's foreheads or on their hands. Mythology. It's all counterproductive to what the Bible teaches. Here again, ladies and gentlemen, if the devil can concoct theories and falsehoods to get Christians sidetracked and to miss Jesus, he'll do it. And so we find right here that He puts a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over the abominations. Now, we need to know what those abominations are, don't you think? What was going on in God's city, in God's church, that God was at such a place that He says this, to the others, He's speaking now to those with the battle axes. To the others He says in my hearing, go after him through the city and kill. This is heavy. This is a God of heaven speaking. And kill. Do not let your eye spare nor have any pity. This is heavy. Utterly slay old and young men, maidens and little children and women, but do not come near anyone whom has the what? If you were living back then, what would you want, ladies and gentlemen, more than anything else in the world? What would you want? The mark of God. While everybody's over here just focusing on the mark of the beast, the mark of the beast, the mark of the beast, the most important thing is the mark of God. But do not come near anyone on whom is the mark. Now notice what He says here. Pastor George, Pastor Wayne, and Steve Vail begin at my sanctuary. Say, or so they began with the elders who were before the temple. That's the leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, to be a minister of the gospel full time is a calling. I can tell you right now, a true minister of God doesn't do it for money and doesn't beg for money. You understand me? Beware. Beware if Steve Vail pulls up in a Mercedes and I got a Rolex on and I've got $1,000 shoes. Oh, what kind of suit do I have on? Oh, chaps. You get it at Kohl's. Beware of the prosperity gospel, ladies and gentlemen, where the preacher says, if I'm prospering, that means God's blessing me. Be careful. Begin with the elders. Begin with the leadership. I've got a problem with my ministers. I've got a problem with my leadership. I've got a problem with my church. I've got a problem with my city, God's saying. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to lead us to the mark of the beast. So what are the abominations? Well, Ezekiel chapter 8. Hang on to your seats. This is the issues that God had with His church back then. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, persecution from outside the church by the secular societies and secular powers of the past only create martyrs and a more powerful church. The blood of the martyrs is like seed Nothing bears testimony more than a person that says, I will stand for God though I die, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like Daniel. But when corruption comes into the church, and its tentacles begin to go everywhere, and the church becomes very worldly, and it drops the standards of the gospel, and it effaces Jesus out of the picture, ladies and gentlemen, God has a problem with that. Son of man, do you see what they are doing? The great abominations that the house of Israel commits here. Where's here? It's His sanctuary. We're going to see clearly. It's His church to make me go far away from my sanctuary. Now, turn again and you will see greater abominations. Ladies and gentlemen, the devil stepped into the church way back then and created paganistic teachings or forced paganistic teachings onto the Israelites, and they embraced them and mingled them with truth. So he brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked in, there was a hole in the wall. Then he said to me, Son of man, dig into the wall. And when I dug into the wall, there was a door. In other words, they think they're hiding all this from me. They've got it all covered up. Can't hide it. And he said to me, go in and see the wicked abominations which they are His people, doing there. So I went in and I saw, and there every sort of creeping things, abominable beast, and all the idols of the house of Israel pictured all around on the walls. And he said to me, turn again and you will see greater abominations that they are doing. As you notice, the abominations, they're all bad, but they will move in intensity. And each succeeding abomination, another abomination is built upon it. And he said to me, turn again and you will see greater abominations that they are doing. So he brought me to the door of the north gate of the Lord's house. You remember those warriors and that scribe, they were headed towards what gate? North. That's my next door neighbor. He needs help, I can tell. That's Kevin that just called me. So he brought me to the door of the north gate of the Lord's house, and to my dismay, women were sitting there weeping for who? It's the son of the sun god, Tammuz, the son of the sun god. Now, this goes back to pagan mythology. How many of you have ever heard of a man by the name of Nimrod? The Bible mentions Nimrod. His wife Semiramis was just as evil as Nimrod. And it's interesting that as you go back and you look at the history of all of this, and you look at the mythology, and some of this stuff kind of weaves truth and mythology together, but there's one thing we are certain. The Bible mentions Nimrod. Nimrod dies. Semiramis does not want to lose her power. If you study carefully, you will see they were the first deified human beings. They were not truly deified. They just claimed to be deified. And so we find that Nimrod dies. Later on, Semiramis comes up pregnant. She wants to hold on to her power, so she said, Nimrod's spirit went to the sun, and the sun impregnated her through the spirit of the sun. You see where this is leading? And she had this son by the name of Tammuz, the son of the sun god. He was a real person who died. And he was a pagan. And here are God's women weeping because of the death of Tammuz. Now, how much of the teachings of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz had entered into the church? I'm sure with careful study you could find out. The Hebrew actually says, in a lewd and idolatrous manner, these women are weeping because of the loss of a pagan. Not because he had lost his soul and they had been praying for him, but because they had bought into the worship. Time does not permit to go any deeper on this. Then he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man? Turn again and you will see what? Greater abomination. It's bad that they're weeping over in a lewd and idolatrous manner. They're weeping over this pagan, quote, unquote, deified human being. But let me show you something even worse. So he brought me into the inner court. Oh man, now we're into a sacred precinct. So he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and there at the door of the temple between the porch and the altar, not just anybody, a Gentile could not be there. These are very special people that can be between the porch and the altar. We're about 25 men. Now notice their positioning. Listen very carefully. We're about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of the Lord and their faces towards and they were worshiping the sun towards the east. Sun worship. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. Why do you think these four empires with all their pagan teachings is pictured as the amalgamated beast of Revelation 13? Because the Church of Rome has taken the sun day in honor of the sun god and has placed it within Christianity. It's nothing new. It had already been done back then. And here again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to be abundantly clear. Yes, this is a Sabbath-keeping church right here. But this church does not own the Sabbath. You understand that? I've had people say, well, I'm not going to join XYZ church because they keep Saturday. That's their day of worship. No, it's the Bible's day of worship. This church, no, any Sabbath-keeping church owns the Sabbath. It's God's. He's given it as a gift. We need to be clear on that. Here is sun worship brought in, and the leaders are participating in it. Now, in order to face the east in the sanctuary, you're turning your back on the Ark of the Covenant where the two tables of stones are, and the fourth commandment says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. They had turned their backs on the Shekinah glory of God, the mercy seat, which all the sacrifices were pointing to a Messiah that would come and save them from their sins, not in their sins. They turned their back on the most important aspects, and that through the mercy seat we could obey the law of God through a grace-saved relationship. They turned their backs on all of that, and now they have entered into sun worship. Usually the direction that the leaders go, the sheep follow. Am I being too direct this morning? Are we good? All right. And when I present stuff like the Sabbath and so forth, people look at me and they go like, oh man, you're out of date, the church is all okay. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, let me be clear. If you've read your Bibles, you know that the majority has never been right in spiritual things. And I believe that we are tempted in all areas of life, whether it's buying a car or whatever it is. Oh, the majority are doing this. Have you ever watched YouTube before? and you click on one of those ads for some weird thing, like, for instance, a Princeton University college student has created this new thing, and it has taken the world by storm. Every one of them has glasses, flashlights, knives. It doesn't matter. Kitty litter, whatever. Taking the world by storm. In other words, everybody else gets it. You ought to get it. The whole world's got it. Do not trust advertising like that. Ladies and gentlemen, the majority is never, ever the rule. Look at Mount Carmel when they were up there and Israel had been yielding to terrible, terrible pagan practices. And Elijah's there. You know the story and how the priests that used to belong to God, they're jumping and screaming and howling and cutting themselves. And Elijah would say, maybe you need to scream a little louder so your God can bring the fire down. Remember? Then Elijah builds the altar, he puts a ditch around it, he fills it with water, and then he simply prays to the God of heaven, and the God of heaven sends Shekinah glory power down and consumes everything. And then what does Israel do? The Lord, He is God. Yes, the Lord is God. The majority on that day, ladies and gentlemen, was wrong. Unless we follow Scripture with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our mind, with every fiber of our being, Matthew 24 says, we will be deceived. You owe it to yourself to understand what the Scriptures say. So here are the preachers of that day. And if you're going to go along with what preachers say, then you'd say, well, the majority of preachers, they're teaching this. Well, the majority of ministers back then were teaching that, and it led to what, ladies and gentlemen? Disobedience to God. That's why there's such a solemn responsibility on ministers to be right with God every day. You know, the Bible says that if you don't give the trumpet to certain sound, pastors, and the enemy comes and the people are not warned, who bears the responsibility? The preachers. The death of the people, their bloods will be on the head of the preacher. But if the preacher gives the trumpet to certain sound and the people are warned that the enemy's coming, and if they do not take heed, their blood is on their own heads. I'm delivering my soul today, ladies and gentlemen. You may say, well, you're just being selfish. No. I believe these things. I take what the Bible says seriously, ladies and gentlemen. This is not because some church pays me to do this. I am compelled by God's grace to preach these things. I believe these things with every fiber of my being, with my hand on the Bible. This is not about money, because if you saw what kind of money we get paid, I can assure you, you would say, you need to do something else. I gave up the money when I went into the ministry and left the electrical business behind. And like I've told some of you before, I do have electrical business that I only use for my family, and that's very rare. It has never, ever been used for anybody outside of my family or the church. When I retire, then it can become a business for me. But until then, absolutely not. I want you to see 25 leaders were their back towards the law of God. And I know I've heard preachers say today, and I believe that they're well-meaning. I'm not trying to rain on their parade, but that the law of God's been nailed to the cross. Anyone who knows the gospel knows that the law of God points out sin and the blood of Jesus cleanses from sin, and that there's no time that you get rid of the law. The law doesn't save you. It's the grace of God that saves you from what, ladies and gentlemen? Sin. And sin is what? The transgression of what? God's law. Transgression of God's law. They were practicing sun worship while calling themselves the people of God. And unfortunately, people are following preachers. They fill big auditoriums. And they get philosophical sermons. Fluff. It doesn't convict of sin, and people are comfortable. And the problem with that is how many of those people really open their Bibles and pray to God every day, sensing the time in which we're living in the last few moments of Earth's history. We're standing on the very eve of the Advent. We should all be alert, on guard, studying, praying, reading. Saying to God, search me, cleanse me, change me, transform me, cut away the garbage out of my life, Lord. Help me to see. Help me to see. Change me. That's where we need to be right now, ladies and gentlemen. The most loving, kind, Bible-believing people on the planet because of a relationship with Christ. Now, it gets worse, unfortunately, in Ezekiel 8:17, and he said to me, have you seen this, O Son of Man? It is a trivial thing to the house of Judah to commit the abominations which they commit here. At what point, ladies and gentlemen, do you get comfortable with sin? At what point does this preacher get comfortable with sin? We're so surrounded by it, so infected with it in the air, that for some reason sin doesn't seem so sinful anymore. But what I have found is that when I spend time with this, that's where I see. The Bible says, do not lean upon your own understanding. The Bible is clear that your own wisdom and counsel outside of this is dangerous. It's dangerous. Have you seen this, O Son of Man? Have you seen this? Verse 17. Mothers, I want you to pay very close attention. For they have filled the land with violence, then they have returned to provoke me to what? Anger. Here it is. This is the ultimate abomination. Indeed, they put the branch to their nose. What does that mean? I did some research. All the previous actions had to do with pagan worship. And then I got to thinking one day, Israel, before they crossed into the promised land, they were to take care of the giants, remember? Two guys come back with a good report, and the others said, no, it's filled with giants, their cities are tall, there's no way we can take it. Well, you know, they were faithless. But two of them said, let's do it. Caleb and who else? Man, I want to meet them when I get to heaven. The Lord resurrects and we're all there standing together. Man, I want to bump fist with those guys. You want to be a man? There you go. That's a man. Don't be this namby-pamby, watered down, whatever, you see on TV advertisements. A man is a man. A godly man is a godly man that treats his family with respect and kindness, but he's still a man. He is the husband, the house man, the protector of the home. Time we be men. don't have to be crude and rude. But I'll tell you what, when the chips are down, you want a wimp or do you want a man, ladies? You want a man, don't you? Yeah. Yeah. Don't let Hollywood tell you what a man is. It's not John Wick. Or Tom Cruise. Neither one of those guys could beat their way out of a wet paper bag. You know, Hollywood has a way of, listen, real men sit at the feet of Jesus every day. Real men are filled with the Spirit every day. Real men allow the Christ of the gospel to control their lives. But the men had to sit on their hands on this one, it seems like. Because you see, the pagan practice, oh, by the way, God said to take the land. Well, we know that sad story. And you know what else the Bible said? If you do not take the land will take your children. You remember that? You will lose your children. The same principle holds true today. I have parent after parent saying, oh, my children are gone. They're this, they're that, the other. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bible says it will happen if we're not about our Father's business. We ought to be the greatest soul winners on the planet because we're in love with Jesus. We hurt over the things that Jesus hurts over. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we find that because they didn't take the land took them. And we see all these pagan practices that have come into the church. And I want to say this, men. You've got to lead in your home. Not a dictator. When you know what is truth, you need to stand on truth, regardless of what everybody else is doing. You've got to be the man. My wife turns away from truth today. I'm going to hold to the truth. And I'm going to follow the truth by God's grace. I'm going to love her. I'm going to pray for her. But ladies and gentlemen, especially you men, you have to set an example for the family and trust that God will do what needs to be done. And ladies, it's the same way with you. The Bible tells you what to be like. The Bible says you don't have to, doll yourself all up to try to convince your husband to be a Christian. Be a Christian. And it doesn't hurt for you to look nice. But I'll tell you what, you're never going to look right unless the love of Jesus is in your heart. All you got to do is go look at Jezebel. Did that work? No. Branch to their nose. In the pagan religious system, an evergreen branch was used, listen carefully, to represent the afterlife, immortality of the soul. Oh, I know it's crept into Christianity. And what would happen is that these mothers would take their precious little babies. Now remember, through Israel, the Messiah was to come. You see a repeated pattern in the Bible of Israel giving up their children. And so the mother hands the baby to a perverted, vile, pagan priest. The priest would take the child and plunge the knife into its chest and then put it in the rock hands of Moloch. As the fires consumed the flesh of an Israelite child, the mother and father would stand there with an evergreen branch at their nose so that they would not smell the stench of their own burning child. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. The way of sin is hard. There's a high price for low living. How could the people of God who've been blessed by God stand there with a pagan symbol in their hand, smelling it as their child is burned. And they were saying by holding it, I believe that they will come forth in the afterlife. The last two abominations have to do with false worship of the day of worship and immortality of the soul. These are the last two great deceptions that will be placed upon this planet. You say, Steve, how can you believe that? Because He's already done it. He's just had a few more thousand years to shine it up and make it more appealing to, quote, unquote, civilization. This stuff is real. This is serious. This is not bedtime stories. How many parents today are offering up their children on the altars? Parents, I think it's wonderful your children know how to play soccer and how to play the violin and the piano and to get a higher education and get degrees. But I'll tell you what, if all of that is at the compromise of a spiritual home, you need to rethink some things. We put God first. Family worship, prayer together, the Father leading the morning and the evening worship time. Don't tell me you can't do it. You can. Well, we're too busy. Then you're too busy. Too busy. So, as those axemen were sent, this is what was going on. And basically what was happening, the same thing that happened to the pagans, how they were destroyed. God said, my people are nothing but pagans. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a clear sign to me that God will not save us in our sins. I don't care what your belief system is. He will not save us in our sins. He has come to save us from our sins. People would say, well, this is a hard, vindictive God. No. He has to deal with it. Now let's go to the book of Revelation, chapter 7, verse 1. I need to let my blood pressure go down a little bit. See what my heart rate is. Revelation 7, verse 1. And after these things I saw four angels. This is end time stuff. And after these things I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth or on the sea or on any trees. By the way, many places in the Bible, trees represent people. We already know that seas represent large populated areas. He goes on to say, then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. Boy, is that what we want? Mark of God in Ezekiel, seal of God, same thing. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was granted. It's like those are the axemen. This is coming. To whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our gods on their foreheads, of our God on their foreheads. Same scenario. It's moved from literal, local in the Old Testament to end time spiritual. This is talking about us. Everybody's interested in the mark, avoiding the mark. The only way to avoid the mark is to have the seal in our foreheads. Notice it doesn't say hands, does it? It says what? Foreheads. There's a reason. Only those that receive the seal of God or the mark of God will survive. those that receive the mark of the beast will be lost. There's a teaching today that says, oh no, church will be secretly raptured away. It's called futurism, ladies and gentlemen. Most people believe this, church-going folks, and are sincere, but they've never studied the history of where it came from. They just believe because their preacher says it, it's true. Came from the Council of Trent. Counter-Reformation by the Roman Catholic Church against the Protestant Reformation. We'll go into that deeper later. But when you think about it, people are being taught that they're not going to go through any mark of the beast thing or anything. They're going to be just swept away. And the poor people that didn't make it get the Protestant purgatory. They get a second chance. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. And so people say, well, you don't need to be preaching these things because the first 4 chapters of Revelation are for us today. Actually, the first 3 and the first 4 verses of chapter 4, and the rest of it is really applicable to those that don't make it in a secret rapture. So don't worry about it now. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that now is the time to understand these things and to know them. Know your Bibles. Know the Christ of the Bible now before it's too late. The next time you think about clicking on the Big Bang Theory or how the world turns or whatever else, Naked and Unafraid or Afraid and Naked, who watches that stuff? Jesus is coming. I don't want to be a fanatic. 2.5 men who in their spiritual mind could sit and watch filth like that. It's the world. All you have to do is look at what the world likes and stay away from it. I've stopped preaching, going to meddling. I need to stop. What I'm saying to you folks, I'm saying to me. I'm not standing up here like I'm all high and holy and high, and mighty and that, listen, my flesh could sit and watch TV all day long if I listened to it. And you know as well as I do, the devil just loves to program us where something that would cause us to recoil, he just gives us little doses until finally we can sit and we can watch stuff that makes angels blush. And this is what I have to do for me. You have to decide on your own. And it's simply this. What am I willing to trade an hour or 2 of my life for? Think about it. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to sit and watch something by beholding we become changed? That we watch things that changes our worldview to more of the world's view? Let me say this. You understand that I didn't even plan to say these things. Music. You know what got me into drugs in the first place? Music. I'm not going to tell you what music you need to listen to or not listen to. That's the work of the Holy Spirit. But just remember this. These are evangelistic sermons. Every song. One of my favorite songs of the past was Kashmir. I'm a traveler both time and space to be where I've been. Who is that? I have sat with the council of the human race. These people are not singing, Jesus loved me. And you notice, the most liberal people on this planet are your movie stars and your what? Rock stars. They're debased. We cannot be. A house divided will fall. Each and every day we have to ask ourselves the question, who has my heart? Who has my heart? Revelation 14:9. We go from chapter 7 to 14. Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, this is the last of the warning messages that's coupled with Revelation 18. If anyone worships the beast, it's always been, always will be. It always goes back to the original saying of Satan that I want to be worshipped, and I will use any earthly power that I can to get worship. If anyone worships the beast in his image and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God. Did you notice what it says? Did you miss that? What did it say? The forehead and the... How can that be? And why is there a difference between the head and the hand? With God, it's only the head. With the beast power, it's the head or the hand. But we need to ask the question, what is the wrath of God? Well, Revelation 15. Let's move a chapter further towards the end of the book. Revelation 15:1. Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them the wrath of God is complete. Now, let me ask you a question. This is a thought that I had one time. Do you think that God would pour out the 7 last plagues on man and not give him an opportunity to know what the mark of the beast is and how to avoid it? What do you think? I love this text. Proverbs 22:3. A prudent man, I'm going to say a prudent woman, man or woman, foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are what? Are you simple? Or are you prudent? Christianity calls for discipline. You set aside time every day for this. You have a place in your home where you go to spend time with this. You turn off the cell phone and whatever else will distract you. And you give this quality time. And what I like to do is pray through the text. And I put my name in the text where it says, I've come to save all of you. I've come to save Steve. And I claim it. I put my finger on it. And I claim the promises of the Bible. Am I your example? No, Jesus is. See what Jesus did. Did Jesus every day find time to spend with his Father? How can we expect not to be corrupted if we are just being sincere, going to church once a week, and just kind of hanging on to that and not spending time with God every day? I've had people say to me, boy, preacher, you must have just been speaking to me today. And I don't even know the person. First time I'd ever been to that church. Well, good. The word that was presented spoke to your heart. But ladies and gentlemen, it's not enough. This has got to speak to Steve Vail's heart every day. I can't get up here and preach before you if I'm not spending time with this. I'll have no power. It's God's Word. It's simple, but it's profound. This is the worldview that we need. I get it. The intellectuals of this world today are scoffing. The Bible says, not many wise men among you. I can tell you right now, no university on this planet is going to tell me what to believe. This Bible's going to tell me what to believe. And I'm not against education, folks. But true education The bottom line, most important education is this. And parents, you need to make that decision for your children while they're still under your watch care. You can't force them, but you can follow the love of Christ and endeavor to give them an opportunity to know. You know, if you think that you can let your kids play video games all day long and then expect them to come to church, I can tell you right now, no preacher on this planet can compete with video games. Can't do it. So the Bible says that those are wise, that are prudent, focusing. Let me warn you in another area. This political arena that we're in it's all predicted by the Bible. Being politically astute, you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a good citizen, but that becomes the overwhelming aspect of your life. And you rather talk about that than the gospel of Jesus Christ. Then what you're saying is you're leaning on the arm of flesh, and you believe whether you're liberal or you're independent or you're, right, whatever it is, conservative, that somehow or another the arm of flesh is going to save us. It never has worked. It's never worked in the Bible. I'm not telling you not to vote. It's not my place. But I can assure you of one thing. If you're feeding on CNN or you're feeding on Fox News all the time, you're feeding on this news or that news or this one or that one, just remember, they are there to make money. And they take polls and they know what people believe. How many times can somebody tell me how corrupt a politician is and yet nothing ever changes about him? I'm 68 years old. I've seen this commercial. It does not change. I'm just simply saying choose wise. Choose very wisely how you're willing to commit your time. Choose wisely. All are involved in this, ladies and gentlemen. No one is exempt. And here again, true and false worship collide. That's what it is. If you've read your Bible, you know all the way through the Bible, God deals with the nations that deal with His people. It's always been about worship, and it always will be. The devil's constantly trying to get us to worship Him without knowing that we're worshiping Him. Again, Revelation presents two groups only. There's no middle ground. A good friend of mine years ago when I became a Christian, and he was very sad that I became a Christian because I wouldn't party with him anymore. He just simply said, I don't want to be on either side. I don't want to be on God's side. I don't want to be on the devil's side. I just want to do my thing. And when I'm done, it's done. Who's speaking? Satan. Let us be clear here today. There is no middle ground. There's no independence in this. You can play that game in politics, but you cannot do that with your soul. One group worships the Creator, Revelation 14:7. One group worships the beast, Revelation 14:9. It's the way it is. Now, what about the number? Let's talk about the number for just a moment. You understand that the number is not the mark of the beast. Oh, a lot of people have said that, but it's not. We studied that on the second night of the meetings. It has to do with the mark of the beast, but it is not the mark of the beast. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads. And that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Don't want to shock you, but hey, we've moved down the road here. From our Sunday visitor, Church of Rome, the official title of the papacy is Vicarious Filii Dei, or Vicar of the Son of God. If you want to do the numbers, just use Roman numerals. V equals 5, I equals 1, C equals 100, A, no value, R, no value, I, 1. U is the same as a V, 5. S is no value. F, no value. I equals 1. L equals 50. I equals 1. I equals 1. D equals 500. E, no value. I equals 1. You add the 501 to the 53 to 112, you come up with 666. Now some people say, well, you can do that with anybody's name. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 11th mark. We've already looked at 10 identifying marks that point to only one power in the past, the present, and yet the future. It's the Church of Rome. Here again, I'm talking about a system of worship, not church members. I have personal friends that are Roman Catholics. Good people. Do they truly understand the gospel of Christ? No. They still believe that by going to the priest and confessing their sins, that somehow or another the priest is the go-between, and that he can tell them what they need to do to deal with their sin. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, you can make pilgrimages, you can count bones, you can count beads, you can say Hail Marys, you can do all those things, but it will not change the heart. Will not change the heart. No human system will work for you. It's only what God, through His Son, has done for our sins. To me, it's great freedom to know that I can come to my Father through Jesus each and every day. And oh, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that I'm sinless. Listen, I have to fall on my knees every day and say, dear God in heaven, how can I go before the people and preach your message with dirty hands? Help me. Help me. I'll tell you right now, I've sinned this week, but I have a Savior. Conviction has come to my heart this week. Sometimes a conviction rattles me to my knees. I need it. I'm no different than you are. Don't put preachers on pedestals. We all have our favorite preachers, but remember, Jesus is number one. Remember that little issue in the Bible where some were saying, well, Peter baptized me. No, Paul baptized me. They had to deal with that. No preacher better than another preacher. As long as they're preaching the Word of God, you say, well, I like this style of the pastor better than this style. Hey, we're all different. Just think if we were all the same. Just think if we all had to drive lime green cars. Now, if it's one of those Dodge Challengers, that's a different story. The seal of God and the mark of the beast are in opposition. He calls us all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads. What does this mean, the forehead or the hand? Let's get into this now. The forehead only. The Bible says, help me with this now. The Bible says that we are to worship who? The Creator God, right? How do we worship Him? Well, it starts with the heart, doesn't it? It calls for a commitment. In fact, as I read through the Bible, the kind of commitment, body, heart, soul, and mind. In other words, the whole being. You know, a lot of people believe that, well, I go to church once a week and I throw some money and, you know, the man up there should take that into account. That is an unconverted person. That's an unconverted person. They have their own form of what religion is. When you are surrendered to Christ and you have yielded your heart to Him and you have allowed the Word of God to purge you, to change you, to transform you each and every day, you begin to understand what it means to have heart worship for God. It's not a mere, I'm doing this. For an example to my children, or I'm doing this so that I can be saved. Ladies and gentlemen, you do it because you are saved. So what does this forehead mean? You understand the two frontal lobes of your brain is where you make your decisions? It's your spiritual heart. God is saying, Thy word have I hid in my, that I might not sin against you. That's why it is imperative to spend time with Christ every day. By beholding, we become changed. Now think about it. You cannot work your way to heaven. It's all about the heart, period. So all who receive the seal of God have a heart relationship with Christ. And yes, they do sigh and cry over the abominations that are done. But that's not the main purpose. Because we can get into the trap of trying to ridicule people in the church that are doing things that we think they shouldn't be doing. No. It's in our hearts. We love Jesus and we want people to love Jesus. Well, we'll use the methods of Jesus. Some people have asked me, well, how do you keep the Sabbath holy? Look at the life of Jesus. Look at how He kept the Sabbath. Sometimes people ask me for a list of do's and don'ts. I say, you know what? Just let the Holy Spirit put the Word in your heart, and He'll tell you what to do and what not to do. It's not my place. There's great freedom in not having to judge other people and dictate to them what they need to do. All I need to do is say, hey, this is what the Word says. Go to the Word. Let the Spirit speak to you about it. Some people say, well, should I be keeping the seventh-day Sabbath? Well, the Bible says we should, but I can't convince you to do that. That has to be the work of the Holy Spirit. He's the one that has to deal with things like, well, I've always done it this way. The family's done it this way. You know, that's between you and God. God has to work with all that. I can't. I mean, when I first became a Christian, you know, well, I could have said, well, you know, I don't want to stop drinking and doing drugs because that's what I've always done. But in thunderous tones, the Lord told me that those things needed to go, and He took them. This is talking about a real, true conversion experience. This is not talking about being religious. This is talking about being spiritual. In Revelation 7:2, then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees till we have sealed the servants of our God where? On their foreheads. So what is the mark of the beast? To understand the mark of the beast, we must first understand the seal, God's seal or mark. And I'm going to stop right here, give you a 5-minute break, and we're going to come back and we're going to finish up. Say you're leaving us hanging. No, it's just a good spot to stop. Makes logical sense. All right.